The rain had already turned the parking lot into a sheet of black glass when a silver luxury sedan rolled to a stop beside a nearly forgotten repair garage on the edge of town. Steam rose from beneath its hood. The engine had died without warning. Inside the car sat a woman whose face appeared regularly on business magazine covers, though nobody in that small industrial district recognized her in the darkness. A man stepped out from the garage carrying nothing more than a flashlight and an old toolbox. "We're closed," he called through the rain. The woman lowered her window. "I know, but I don't think this car is going anywhere." He looked at the expensive vehicle, then at the soaked road stretching for miles. "You shouldn't stay out here." Neither of them knew that before sunrise, a routine repair would uncover the first clue in a corporate fraud worth over $87 million. His name was Daniel Brooks, 38 years old, widowed, father of an 11-year-old daughter named Emma. He owned Brooks Auto Repair, a shop his late father had built 40 years earlier. The business barely survived. Corporate dealerships had swallowed most local customers, and banks had rejected Daniel's requests for refinancing 3 times in 2 years. His mortgage payments were overdue. Medical bills from his wife's cancer treatment still haunted him. Every month was another battle. The woman quietly handed him the keys. "My name is Claire." She didn't mention her last name. Daniel opened the hood. The problem wasn't major. One damaged ignition relay. A loose electrical connector. 15 minutes of work. He could have charged thousands because of the vehicle's brand. Instead, he smiled. $40. Claire looked surprised. "That's it?" "It's a $40 problem." She laughed for the first time that evening. Most places would have seen the logo on the hood before looking at the engine. "I fix cars," Daniel replied, "not bank accounts." She paid him. As she prepared to leave, she noticed an old framed photograph hanging inside the office. "Daniel, his wife, little Emma," Claire quietly asked. "Your family?" "My wife passed away 4 years ago." "I'm sorry." Daniel simply nodded. Life had taught him that some pain never needed explaining. She drove away into the rain, but before disappearing, she looked into the rearview mirror. "I want to see you again." Daniel assumed she was simply being polite. He returned to work. The next morning, 3 black SUVs stopped outside the garage. Men in tailored suits stepped out. One introduced himself. "My name is Richard Hayes. I'm legal counsel for Hawthorne Global Holdings." Daniel frowned. "I think you've got the wrong address." Richard smiled. "No, we don't." Then another car arrived. Claire stepped out. Only then did Daniel recognize her. Claire Hawthorne, founder and CEO of Hawthorne Global Holdings. Estimated personal wealth, $4.6 billion. Daniel stood speechless. Claire smiled. "I told you I wanted to see you again." She walked inside the garage, ignoring the puddles on the floor. "I'd like you to service my personal collection." Daniel looked confused. "You have mechanics." "I do. I trust you more." Over the next several weeks, luxury cars arrived almost daily. Vintage Ferraris, classic Rolls-Royces, rare Aston Martins. Daniel treated every vehicle exactly the same. No shortcuts, no inflated invoices, no unnecessary repairs. Claire often stayed while he worked. They talked about family, about loss, about perseverance, never about money. One afternoon, she noticed an unopened envelope from First National Commercial Bank lying on his desk. "You haven't opened it." "I already know what's inside." "What?" "Another foreclosure notice." Claire didn't say anything. She simply remembered. 2 days later, Daniel attended the meeting alone. The bank offered him one final choice: vacate the property within 30 days. The land beneath his garage had become valuable after the city announced plans for a massive commercial redevelopment district. Daniel couldn't compete. He signed nothing. He walked away. That evening, Claire appeared again. "You look exhausted." "I may lose everything." She asked one question: "Who owns the original land deed?" "The bank." "Are you certain?" Daniel nodded. "My father borrowed against it decades ago." Claire stared thoughtfully. Sometimes certainty is expensive. The following week, something unusual happened. Claire delivered one of her oldest cars. a 1968 Lincoln Continental that had belonged to her father. While replacing damaged floor panels, Daniel discovered a small waterproof metal tube hidden beneath the rear seat support. He assumed it was part of an old repair. Inside was a folded envelope, yellow with age. Claire carefully unfolded the papers. There were handwritten notes, property surveys, corporate correspondence, and one signed agreement dated October 14, 1981. Claire's expression changed instantly. "This shouldn't exist." Daniel looked at her. "What is it?" she whispered. "Evidence." The documents referenced a forgotten land acquisition involving Hawthorne Global's earliest manufacturing facility. According to official records, several surrounding properties had supposedly been purchased legally decades earlier, but these papers suggested something entirely different. Several parcels, including Daniel's garage, had never actually transferred ownership. Instead, temporary financing agreements had been mistaken for permanent sales. Somebody inside the bank had altered filing records years later. If true, thousands of commercial acres had been developed on disputed legal foundations. Claire immediately contacted independent attorneys rather than her own corporate legal team. She trusted almost no one. The investigation remained secret for nearly 3 months. Archivists searched county basements. Surveyors compared handwritten maps. Retired clerks were interviewed. Microfilm records emerged. Forgotten signatures resurfaced. One retired registrar made an astonishing statement. "I remember being told to destroy duplicate records." "Who told you?" "The bank." By then, federal investigators had quietly become involved. The numbers were staggering. 42 properties, 3 banks, 7 shell companies, millions in fraudulent loans, one hidden chain connecting everything. Daniel's garage sat directly at the center. Then came the pressure. Anonymous callers demanded he sell immediately. Inspectors suddenly declared safety violations. Insurance companies canceled policies. Utility permits disappeared. Even anonymous online reviews flooded his business overnight. Every tactic pointed toward one goal: force him out before court. Claire refused to let that happen. She hired independent security, paid every legal expense herself, not because Daniel had asked, because she believed someone honest shouldn't stand alone against people with unlimited resources. The bank responded aggressively. Their attorneys claimed Daniel had no standing. The discovered documents were dismissed as irrelevant. Claire's lawyers smiled. They hadn't yet revealed the strongest evidence. Months earlier, Daniel had unknowingly preserved fingerprints on the sealed metal tube. Forensic analysis confirmed it hadn't been opened since the early 1980s. The chain of custody was almost perfect. Then investigators found something even bigger: an internal banking memo. Never intended for public eyes, it instructed executives to convert temporary collateral filings into permanent ownership entries before digitization. One sentence, 21 words, enough to threaten decades of corporate transactions. The courtroom became packed with reporters. Financial analysts watched closely. Developers feared billions in lawsuits. Daniel wore his only suit. Claire sat quietly behind him, not as a billionaire, as someone waiting for justice. The bank's lead attorney argued for hours: technicalities, statutes of limitation, administrative errors, complex financial structures. Then Daniel was asked one simple question: "Why didn't you give up?" He looked toward the judge. "My father taught me something before he died." "What was that?" "If truth is buried long enough, people start calling it history." The courtroom fell silent. Weeks later, the ruling arrived. The original deed remained legally valid. Daniel retained ownership of his property. The fraudulent transfers were declared subject to federal review. Multiple executives resigned within days. Criminal investigations followed. Investors filed lawsuits exceeding $3 billion. Several redevelopment projects froze indefinitely. The story spread across every major news network. Reporters wanted interviews. Daniel declined nearly all of them. He simply returned to fixing cars. Exactly as before. One quiet afternoon, Claire arrived again. This time there was no broken vehicle, Only coffee. Emma was finishing homework in the office. Claire smiled. Mind if I sit? Daniel laughed. You don't need permission. She looked around the old garage. Grease stains, concrete floors, tools older than most mechanics. This place changed my life. Daniel shook his head. No, you changed your own. She smiled. Maybe. Then she handed him a folder. Inside was a partnership agreement, not a purchase offer, not a buyout, a partnership. Claire wanted to fund vocational schools where struggling single parents could learn automotive repair, welding, electrical work, and small business management. Every school would carry one condition. Nobody would ever be turned away because they couldn't afford tuition. Daniel looked at her. Why me? She answered without hesitation. Because when my car broke down in the rain, everyone else would have seen a billionaire. You saw a stranded driver. Months later, Brooks Automotive Training Foundation opened its first campus. Former mechanics became instructors. Single mothers found careers. Veterans rebuilt their lives. Young people who had been told success belonged only to the wealthy discovered another path. And hanging inside the entrance was the old $40 repair invoice, framed, unchanged. Visitors often asked why such an ordinary receipt occupied the most important wall in the building. Daniel always gave the same answer. Because the biggest moments in life rarely announce themselves. Sometimes they arrive in the rain, and sometimes all they ask is whether you'll do the right thing when nobody is watching, and the belief in a thing makes it happen.